Hi guys, it's Amber. Welcome back to my channel. This is week 15 of the fertility episodes, and once again I am really sorry that this is late coming on. So the weekend was spent down in Dorset with my mum and my sister and my stepdad, so we kind of had our own little Christmas day, as we're not going to spend Christmas Day with them, so that's kind of what we did. So obviously I just kind of wanted to enjoy my time with them, and so that's exactly what I did. So there's obviously now 4 weeks left of these episodes. I put out a little poll on, I don't know if I say that weird, do I say that weird? Poll, I think I say it right, poll. Now it's starting to sound weird. I put a little poll out on Instagram the other day asking what videos you wanted to see for the remainder of the 4 weeks, and I got really quite an overwhelming majority on the videos I'd put out there. So I think I asked you about 8 and 4 came back really strong, so those 4 are the 4 that I'm going to cover over the next few weeks. I am today going to cover things that I wish I had known before I started IVF. There are a lot of them, but I've kind of narrowed down the main ones, if you like. I think it's really important to do your research before you go into IVF, and I think I had spent so long researching everything to do with it, and yet I still felt a bit like a rabbit in headlights throughout the entire process, and I don't necessarily think I asked enough questions. So I will go into this in more detail with you. Obviously, if you haven't already, then please pause this video and subscribe to my channel. You have 15 previous fertility episodes, well, 14 previous and today, which obviously you can watch at your pleasure, whatever, and then there's another 4 coming. And on top of that, like I said the other day, I do just want to clarify, I am going to continue this channel. It isn't a case of these fertility episodes coming to an end and then that is that. I am aiming to now, obviously this usually goes up on a Saturday, and I'm aiming to upload something non-fertility related during the week. So I am going to continue this on. Like I said on Instagram the other day, I am still going to be talking about everything to do with the IVF. I'm still going to be incredibly open with that, and that is all going to be on my channel, but as and when it happens. So when we start our cycle again in hopefully January, but when we start our cycle again next month, ooh, that's quite crazy, next month, then I will be vlogging about it, I will be talking to you about it. So these fertility episodes, if you like, the fertility videos are not coming to an end, so don't think like they are, because they're not. But I don't want to necessarily focus every single video I ever do on it when nothing is really going on, as I don't want to get to the point where I feel like I have to really dig deep to talk about things that I don't necessarily completely understand myself, whereas when I'm talking about things that have obviously impacted me, I have a lot to say on it, and hence these videos appear. But anyway, yeah, obviously my Instagram is still very much fertility related, and everything is going to stay that way. So yeah, so basically, if you're new here, then please pause, subscribe, it's really appreciated, and please make sure that you head over to my Instagram and follow me on there as well. My Instagram handle is Amber in a Teacup. So yeah, that is it. So like I said, today, things that I wish I knew before I started IVF. So yeah, that's it. Go grab yourself a cup of tea, get yourself all comfy, whatever, come back, we will talk all things vagina. Hello loved ones, welcome back. Hope you've all got your cups of tea. It's now December, we're heading into Christmas, so of course I had to get my Santa mug out, the red lippies out. Christmas is coming, so more and more Christmas is going to feature here on this channel, starting with my Christmas mugs. So next week another mug will be making an appearance, and I'm just going to introduce you to my collection as we go. Anyway, so I hope you're all alright. I hope you've all had lovely weeks, or even though, you know, it's technically the mid of the week, but I hope you had lovely weeks last week, and really nice weekends. I'm going to stop talking rubbish now, and I'm just going to crack on with it. So like I said, this week we are talking about things that I wish I had known before we started IVF. The very, very first thing that always springs to mind is that I wish I knew how much time you actually spend in clinics. Some people don't like to tell their employer what they're going through. Some people do. I did. But it didn't make it easy for me. If you're like me and your cycle's really unpredictable, then you can't really book the time off work because you don't know when it's going to be starting. And especially where I work at the minute, it's really, really hard to get time off. So people are saying to you, oh, just book the time off. It's not necessarily that simple. Obviously, if your cycle is like clockwork, or you can pretty much figure out, you know, when you're going to be injecting, when you're going to have your egg collection, when your 2-week wait is going to be, then I think if you're able to, I do think it's an ideal time to kind of figure out what time you need off work. You know, you're clear. My scans anyway were first thing in the morning, so there were occasions where I was able to go to London, I was able to have my scan, and then I would come back home, get changed, and I would go to work. So it is doable, but just bear in mind how often you are going to be in the clinic. That is one thing that I do think maybe you should have that conversation with your clinic when you first sit down with them and you're talking about everything. I think in my case I had to go day 5, day 7, day 9 and day 11, and then obviously day 13 was my egg collection, and then day 3 or day 5, whatever day it was going to be in the end, would have been my transfer. So I have 6 days there within a 2-week period effectively where I am ferrying back and forth to London. Obviously if your clinic is local, then maybe it's a little bit easier for you, but if it's not, and you're not funded on the NHS and therefore you've kind of travelled like I did, it can make it quite difficult. So that is one thing I really do wish I had kind of paid a bit more attention to, just how much time, because it's not just, I think, like in my case, it wasn't just time that I was losing, but it was also the money. Like, it's not cheap to be going to London and back every other day at peak time. It does work out really expensive. I did get myself a rail card and I saved myself an awful lot of money by doing that. But for example, on the day of my transfer or supposed transfer, we had spent I think it was £110 on train tickets, and obviously we went to the next stop because the transfer didn't happen. So that's a lot of money to lose, and I think over the course of those 2 weeks I must have spent close to £300, if not more, on train tickets. So yeah, how much time you spend at clinics is definitely something that I think you should look into, especially, like I say, if you're travelling a bit further afield. It is pricey and it's a lot of time, and like I say, depending on your employer, depends on how hard that's going to be. Like next time I'm dreading it because I haven't got any annual leave left. So I think I've got like 2 days, and that's not really enough, really. The other thing I kind of really wish I knew was just how tired the injections were going to make me as well. Like, everybody talks about the side effects, and I'm in a group on Facebook, all to do with IVF, and I had kind of put the question out there about the specific medication and dosage that I was on, asking what the side effects were, and most people were saying that they didn't really have any side effects per se. They had things like hot flushes at night, but other than that, like, that was it. They didn't really get the mood swings or anything like that, and I didn't either, really. I didn't get the mood swings, but as I've said before, I was shattered constantly. I think when I first started the first set of medication, the Benfola I was on, that didn't really make me that tired. It made me a little bit bloated, but other than that, I was okay. It was more when I started on the Setratide, and that made me so tired. It was little things like I'd get up in the morning, I'd make breakfast, I'd go take the dog for a walk, and I'd get back and that'd be it. I'd be like, I'm done. So I think that's another thing when it comes to taking the time off work as well, that it is really hard work when you are that tired. I remember going to a scan and then coming back and doing a 10-hour shift, and bearing in mind I have a kind of 45-minute drive each way. I was out the house that day from 6:30 in the morning until nearly 11 o'clock at night, and it killed me. And I think that is again something that you really need to factor in, like how tired. You don't know how tired you're going to be. You don't know how you're going to react. You don't know if you are going to have the most bloated sore belly in the world and you're going to feel like you're 9 months pregnant. You don't know how you're going to react. So again, it's all kind of coming down to work, isn't it? Basically what I'm saying is take 2 months off work, paid, and if they don't let you, then well, get signed off. Definitely not condoning you doing that. Not that my boss is ever going to watch this, but yeah, I'm really not going to do that, so please don't fire me. Thanks. So yeah, I think, like I say, I wish I'd known how much of an effect it was going to have on my body. I know that realistically that is something that I can't do. Like, I can't predict how I'm going to react. Like, next time I'm going on different medications, so I don't know how I'm going to react to that. I don't know if I am going to be a lot less tired, less bloated, or whether or not it's going to completely increase and I'm going to be a hormonal horrible person. I don't know. But it is something worth factoring in. I think do your research on the medication, have a look at the common side effects, the not so common side effects, and just decide what's best for you. Ultimately that's what you have to do. But I think, yeah, I definitely wish I'd looked into that a little bit more and kind of understood my body. But then again, it is virtually impossible, so I'm teaching you to suck eggs really, aren't I? Soz mate. Another thing I think I really wish I knew was how out of control I would feel. Like, I think as much as it's a really controlled thing, like the IVF itself is incredibly controlled. You have certain times and things like that that you have to stick to. You have to do your medication at a certain date. No, I'll start that again. You have to do your medication at a certain time. You start on a certain date. You have to have scans at certain points. And it is all really highly controlled, but none of it is controlled by you. I'm a bit of a control freak, so I really struggled with that side of things. Like, I think there was so much that like, I think, like, when I stopped my injections, for example, I felt completely lost and I wanted to carry on with my injections. Honestly, I was gutted that I'd had to stop because I felt like it was the only thing that I had any control over. And after that, it's just a waiting game for you, really. Like, there's nothing you can do in that time other than have your eggs taken out of you. And then as soon as that is all over and done with, it's completely out of your hands. Like, literally nothing you do will change the result of whether or not they fertilise, what day they can transfer, and whether or not then, realistically, whether or not it sticks. I think as much as we like to think there are things that we can do to promote the stickiness, if you like, and there's certain superstitions like eating the pineapple core and the fluffy socks and the McDonald's fries, there's all those superstitions. Ultimately, I feel a bit harsh saying it, but ultimately it is down to luck. Like, you could do everything in the world that the book told you to do and it still wouldn't work. And I wish I had known just how out of control that made me feel. I think I do not like not knowing what's what. I don't like surprises. I don't like anything like that. I'm just not great with it. So yeah, I did feel really, again, like a rabbit in headlights. Like, I didn't feel in control over any of it, and that for me was really hard. So I wish I'd been able to prepare myself a little bit more for that, because I don't think it's something that you think about. Sorry, I'm really not very comfy today. My chair isn't, stool even isn't the comfiest of things for some reason. So yeah, that is something that I do really wish I'd known. And on top of that, I wish I'd known kind of, obviously you know that it is going to be a harder process for you than it is your partner. I think if you're the one that is injecting yourself and you are the one that's got to go under sedation and you've got to have the surgical removal of your eggs, etc., you know that it is going to be harder for you, but I don't think you quite realise how much. Like, I think, I don't know, I see obviously a lot of people like their partner doing their injections and their partner likes playing that part in it, but not everyone does. Like I think Marco did one of my injections and then he did my trigger, and that was fine. Like I wasn't bothered about that at all, but obviously there were times where I was at work or I was in London and I would need to do that injection myself. He couldn't even be there, and I had all these things to remember and had to make sure that I did it at a certain time and this, that and the other, whereas ultimately all he has to do for 2 weeks is sit there and watch you do that and watch you react to these hormones and watch you feel really tired and be useless and completely lose your sex drive and all the rest of it. And all he has to do really is not have sex for a few days and then have the wank of his life in a clinic. Ultimately, that's all it is. Sorry, that sounds really crude, but that's basically what he's got to do. And I think I found that quite hard. Like, I think I was putting myself through all this, and I think there were times where I felt bitter towards Marco because he wasn't having to do any of that. And I would remind him that, and I would say to him, this is easy for you. And of course it's not easy for them. Like, the emotional side of things is just as hard for them as it is for you. Obviously, different couples have different scenarios. You may be going through IVF because it is male factor, and for them then it potentially is harder for them than it is you. I don't know. I don't know. I suppose you never live in anybody else's head, do you? So you don't really fully understand how somebody else feels. But for me, I felt quite bitter and quite angry that I had to go through all this and he didn't. And so ultimately when it failed, how again it was my body and I had put my body through all this and then it didn't work. So yeah, I think that's definitely something I kind of wish I'd thought about some more, and maybe we as a couple had spoken about how hard it was going to be for me and what he could do to support me. And he was brilliant the whole way through, but I think there were times where you would clash and you would be looking at him snacking on a pizza thinking, I want that, but if I eat that I'm going to feel like I'm going to throw up and burst because my stomach is already 10 times the size of me. So yeah, it's one of those things, I think, but it's definitely worth the conversation and having a conversation about how you can support each other and what's going to work for you as a couple. I also wish, in a weird... No, I don't think it is weird. I wish I had... Like, I know people who have had IVF and it hasn't worked, and I've had conversations with them, and then the people that are closest to us, I think, that we know personally, who have gone through IVF, it's worked for them. So I think even they don't fully understand, well, they don't understand how we feel now it's failed. And one thing I do wish is that we had kind of put a bit more thought and a bit more research into what happens after it fails. So it's things like the side effects of coming off all the medication. Of course, in your head, you are 150%, I want this to work. This is going to work. We are going to be so positive, and this IVF is all going to go to plan, and I'm going to be pregnant by the end of it. Of course, that is what's going through your head, and it is right for all that to go through your head. But I had no idea how crappy it was going to be coming off this medication. I think my skin has blown up like you would not believe. I have had to buy so many different face products and a new foundation and everything because just nothing was working. I've got one on my chin here that I'm not going to zoom in and show you. I think I put it on Instagram the other day. It's massive. I literally have like a mountain all here. All around here, like all my pores are really open. I seem to be getting loads of blackheads. Then just little under skin spots all around here. And I just get random ones everywhere. I've always had the odd spot here and there, whereas this is something chronic. I don't know what's happened, but I'm pretty sure you could play dot to dot with my face. But nobody tells you any of that. People don't tell you about that. People don't tell you about the fact that as you're coming off the progesterone, you will feel really, really tired. The headaches coming off it is... it's horrible. All of it is horrible. Coming off that medication is vile. And it just like, this is a bit gross, but even just going to the toilet, like I think... suddenly your bowels are really loose and you've gone from being constipated to the complete other end, and it's just, whoa, what is going on, what is going on, this is not nice, help me, I am dying. It's kind of what goes through your head all the time. But then on top of that, things like when you go for a wee, and like things just, obviously your cycle is completely messed with, so all your cervical mucus is kind of playing games with you, and it's just not very nice. And I wish I had known all that so I could prepare myself, because when it failed, not only was I really upset, but then my body started doing all these weird things, and I was like, great, so not only has it not worked, but I've now got skin that you could quite literally batter a sausage on, and it's just not very nice. It really isn't very nice. My face looks like it's covered in warts, my skin's really oily, I'm going to the toilet all the time, and I just feel minging. So I wish I knew that. I wish I knew more about what happens when it fails. I also wish I knew that it could fail, and I knew that it failing was a very real possibility. However, I wish I had known more about what could go wrong. Obviously, when you go in and you are speaking to your clinic and the consultant is telling you all about it and what they do, etc, 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 they do tell you obviously all the risks, the fact that it might not work, the different points where it might fail. However, for us, not getting to the final hurdle, not getting to the transfer, wasn't really something that we'd thought about. So when you're sat in that room and they're telling you all the different things that could go wrong and where it could fail, etc, 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 it kind of all just goes over your head, because you are just thinking of the end goal. And like I said, it's really good to be positive, and I think you have to go into this with a positive mind, because if you don't, you're just setting yourself up for failure. I do have a bit of a belief in the law of attraction, and I do think that if you go in and you are thinking this isn't going to work, this isn't going to work, this isn't going to work, then it's not going to work. But I think I wish anyway, that I had really thought about the fact that we might not make it to transfer, and I didn't even think about the prospect of eggs not fertilising and not getting embryos. So the fact that we only got 2 out of 7, for me, I was like, oh. And it was a shock to the system. So then from there on in, everything was a disappointment, and I couldn't, like, people kept saying to me, oh, well, it only takes one, you only need that one good one, whereas I couldn't think of that, and I was just thinking, well, yeah, but why didn't the others work? Like, that's not supposed to happen, that happens to other people, not me. Well, it doesn't, it happens to me, it happened to me. So I do think that's something that you've got to keep in your mind, and you have to kind of look at the different stages and what can go wrong, as well as what can go right. And I think it's just as important to educate yourself on the negative side of IVF as well as the positive, because it is hard, it's a really hard process. And so when you are getting these phone calls and you don't know what it is they're telling you or what things mean, I think it is good to have educated yourself on that, so that you're not in the position that I was, going, well, why, is this good, is this bad? So I do wish I'd kind of just looked into the failures a little bit more, and maybe processed and accepted the fact that we might not get to transfer. So yeah, I think that's another thing that I really wish I'd thought of. Another thing, you don't realise like how attached you get to those embryos pretty quickly. Like, I think as soon as we got the call to say that 2 had fertilised, in my head I was like, oh, I wonder if that'll be a boy, I wonder if that'll be a girl. And your mind kind of just plays little tricks on you. And at the end of the day, I've never been pregnant before, I've never been close. There has never been mine and my husband's DNA combined to create any kind of embryo. And so I felt quite attached to those. And I think ultimately that, you know, when it failed, it wasn't just a case of the prospect of not being pregnant, it was that we didn't have them anymore either, and that little concoction of our DNA had vanished, like that didn't exist anymore. And I found that bit quite hard to deal with. because I think ultimately that's what you want. So yeah, that was, I wish I'd known that. I think that was something that somebody told me they felt kind of after I'd had my transfer, and it was after I'd had my, I didn't have a transfer, after I had my collection, and they said, it's weird, isn't it, how attached you feel to your little M babies? And it was like, well, yeah, actually, yeah, it is really weird. Whereas I kind of wish I'd known that before, because I, again, I don't know how I'd prepare myself for all these things that I say I would have prepared myself for, but I feel like I would have been able to comprehend it a little bit more. I also wish I had kind of understood that the injections weren't as bad as I thought they were. Once I'd done it, it was actually really easy. And I think I had built it up so much in my head that it was almost a bit of a non-event when I did it. It was a bit like, oh, I've done it, is that it? Like, what now? So I do wish I'd kind of known how, I don't think easy is the right word, because it's not easy, but they're a lot easier than you anticipate them to be. Like, you think they're going to be this really painful, really, well, maybe you don't, but if you've got a bit of a fear of needles, injections, things like that, like me, then you kind of do. You build it up to be this huge thing in your head, and then when it actually happens, really it's nothing. And it's actually a bit boring. Like, I don't know, the more complicated the more the injection, the more, like, thrilling I found it, which is weird and a little bit sadistic. Maybe I need some help there. But generally they were a lot easier than I thought. And I think that kind of brings me on to my last piece a little bit, that I wish I'd known how strong I was. Like, I thought this was going to cripple me. And I think the whole thing, from the injections that I'd built up in my head to be this absolutely horrific event, I wish that I knew that I was going to be okay, because I think it would have made the build up a lot easier. And I wish that I could have seen almost into the future and just seen that I would do it and that I would be fine and how much I would boss it. And that really it was a case of right, in, out, done. And I wish I'd known that. I wish I'd known that about myself, so I could have had a little bit more faith in myself and been a bit more calm about it and a bit cooler and a bit more like injection swag. That's it. I wish I could have handled it with a bit more swagger. Oh God, I make myself cringe, I'm sorry. But that's it. I kind of wish I knew how strong I was. And even I think when it came to the side effects, like even my husband was saying he was pleasantly surprised at how cool I was. Like, I wasn't stressy, I wasn't hormonal, I wasn't all over the place, I wasn't shouting and angry and then I was okay and then the next minute I was crying. There was none of that. And I do feel like I just kind of took it in my stride and just cracked on with it. And I wish I'd known that I could do that, because again, you build everything up in your head. And ultimately I wish that I'd known that I could cope with it failing. Like, I didn't at all for the first few days, but I think you have to have that grief and you have to kind of have that up and down roller coaster. Like, I still have days where I feel sad, don't get me wrong. There are still random moments where it pops into my head and I think, oh, here we go again. But ultimately I am alright, like I'm absolutely fine. But yeah, I do wish I'd just had a little bit more faith in myself and just push myself that little bit more, going, you'll be fine, like, what are you doing? And not let myself get into bed a week before I was due to start and cry because I was panicking about the injections and things like that. Like, I just wish that I knew I was going to be alright. And I think that's it really. That's something that I think is really quite a big thing for me, that I just wish I'd known I was strong, because I bloody am. But yeah, I think that's it. I think I just wish I'd been able to shape myself and go, you're going to be alright. Like, calm yourself down, girl. Pull yourself together. I was going to be alright. Okay, so my tea is now empty and that is it from me. So thank you so much for tuning in. Thank you for watching me once again and listening to me babble on about all things vagina. Yeah, like I say, make sure that you subscribe and make sure that you turn your notifications on so you can see when I upload, not just my fertility episodes at the weekend, but my random little videos in the week. I really appreciate all your support. Make sure that you also head over to my Instagram and that you follow me on there. But it's been lovely catching up with you. So if I don't see you through the week, then I will see you next weekend for another episode of Let's Talk Fertility. So yeah, I hope you've enjoyed this one. I hope you've got something out of it. And yeah, I'll see you then. Bye.